Yeah, we spoke with our mutual friends at Notre Dame College about transitioning your IEP or 504 plan to college. That's a whole other basket of information. Let's get back to the beginning, which is when a student, maybe it's just beginning high school, maybe it's before that, maybe it's the middle of high school, is struggling, and people around that student recognize that maybe a 504 IEP is called for. What are the
Yeah.
steps that families should take?
So first, my first point is the parents need to be clear on their concerns. So you need to sit at home with your son or your daughter and have that son dump all of the concerns. What are those anxious moments that they're having during their school day? What is causing them to drift during science class and they're getting overwhelmed and they're not understanding the vocabulary words? We don't know unless we ask. So you first have to ask the student, what are your concerns? How can we help? And then we take that information to the school. I do not recommend you ever take the child into the school during that conversation. We have not had a plan put in place just yet. So once that plan's put in place, I am fine with your son being involved with that conversation. But until everyone has the same plan and it's in place and it's in writing, I really do not find it serves a value to the student.
So when a parent goes into the school, who are they speaking to? Who's their first point of contact?
So my first point of contact would be the actual teacher. So now let's say we're in high school. We have a lot of teachers. I would probably go to the guidance counselor, the school psychologist, and then one teacher you trust. What is one teacher that you trust that's listening? Because not all of the teachers might have the same image of what they see needs to happen. So I would definitely bring a teacher you trust, school psychologist, and another administrator. And then if you do not have a general education teacher in the meeting, it is not considered an IEP meeting. So then you have to bring everybody back. So let's have the right people at the table at that first meeting so we can get things moving along.
So presumably there's going to be some documentation that you're going to need, i.e. some testing. What kind of testing is typically required in order to get a 504 or an IEP?
Okay, so those are two totally different platforms. So I'm going to now first focus on the IEP. And actually, you do not need documentation, such as an outside evaluation. I'll use Dr. Cheryl Chase as an example. I'm just going to use Dr. Cheryl Chase. You do not need an ADHD diagnosis to dive into the IEP process. What you need is data that shows your child is not progressing in the academic setting.
And that's all school-based. That's all grades.
Yes.
I did not know this, Mary Jo. I thought you always needed a psychological evaluation to apply for accommodations.
No. So now we're going down the next path. Accommodations for the 504. Yes, it is helpful to have that outside diagnosis to bring to the table, because once you have that out diagnosis, you qualify under the umbrella of the law. Yes. But now I'm talking about the IEP.
Right.
So now let's go back to that IEP. That IEP, you just need to show a timeline of regression. If you look at the STAR test, if you look at his MAP test, if you look at his spelling test, every month, every week, everyone's you can get at least 75 and above, but he's only getting 2 words, and it's been week after week after week after week. That shows he is not able to hold on to the concept. He gets it on Monday. He can't retain it. There's something wrong there. So let's dig deep. And that's when you determine whether the child, are we suspecting a disability? That's when you dive in and you do the assessments. Those assessments, it's called a planning meeting. Are you familiar with a planning meeting? Should I dive into that planning meting? You want to hear about the planning meeting?
Please, if you have a moment, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. So within the planning meeting, you have suspected a disability. There's 13 categories. And I'm going to say other health impairment and specific learning disability, because remember, our guy that we're talking about is a freshman in high school and he's ADHD. So those are the 2 paths you'll probably go down. You can put both of them on the document. And then you're going to look at general intelligence. Look at parents' information. You're going to look at academic skills. When you look at general intelligence, if you come to the table with outside documents, that can be included. you don't have to retake that test, and you shouldn't retake that test. There's, within a year and a half, 2 years, you shouldn't be retaking a similar test. So
when you say that test, you mean an IQ test?
Yeah, so you had a test done by Dr. Cheryl Chase. She brought something in. You can bring that to the table. That adds value to your planning meeting. And you need to bring that to the table beforehand. So they look at that and they're like, oh, there's no need to redo that. We're going to just use that report. A lot of parents are fearful that the schools will not respect the outside evaluation. That is true that they don't have to own the whole piece and parts of the evaluation, but I have not yet in the 10 years attending meetings had a district say, we will not look at that. We deny those findings. We're going to do our own assessment.
So is the idea that there would be some kind of discrepancy between, let's say, the testing or an IQ and the performance in class? Is that what they're looking for, to realize that there needs to be some kind of plan put together?
Exactly. That's exactly what they're looking at. They're looking at, he has 122 IQ, but yet he's getting all Ds. There's something wrong.
Now that also raises the question, and this is what I always wonder, is the student who is more average, right? What about those kids where they get by, they're not excelling? Are those students harder to identify because they're, where they are and where they're supposed to be might be less differential? I don't know if that's a good way of saying it.
So when I first started, I would have said yes. That would have been a hard qualifier. However, now teachers are doing a really good job of respecting the outside evaluations and understanding them. So when you look at the bell curve, and you really have to understand the bell curve, and that's something that I talk to my families about. So they understand that bell curve, so they know when they see that their child's numbers are all in the 110s and 122, but their processing speed is 72. Okay, that tells me a story. I know what to do now. I know how to respond to the teachers when they say, why is he not handing in his homework, but yet he knows how to do it? Why is he able to follow through in the classroom, but he doesn't seem to be able to respond 2 days later to something he knew in the classroom? The numbers tell a story. And that's why this planning meeting is so important, because these assessments will come to the table and we will all look at them as a team. And then that will navigate the system to decide what our next steps will be.
We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did. You'll find plenty more like it when you explore the Tests and the Rest channel. Be sure to comment, share, and subscribe for a constant stream of insights into learning, education, testing, and admissions. For full podcasts and amazing resources, find us at testsandtherest.com.